worldwide wisdom, and we're learning about Hanukkah. We're learning about today about King Solomon, the wisest of all men. This is amazing, guys. King Solomon, the wisest of all men, is going to tell us about the meaning of life. Now, King Solomon is a big deal. You have to understand, King Solomon is a big deal. The story of King Solomon is that when he was a young boy, I think he was 9 years old, and his father passed away, King David passed away. So through a whole negotiation, it was arranged that he would become the new king. But he's 9 years old, he's the boy king. So what happens? An angel comes to him in a dream and he says to him, you're now being anointed as the new king. Make one wish. This is where all the fables come from, right? Make one wish. He could have wished for money. He could have wished for power. What does he wish for? The 9-year-old boy. He wishes for wisdom. Wisdom. Then he wakes up. Oh, sorry. I think the angel says to him that since you were so wise to pick wisdom, I'm going to give you power and influence as well. Money and influence. Okay. He wakes up, and the first thing he notices is that he's able to understand the chirping of the birds on the windowsill. Whoa. That's pretty cool. If you can understand the language of the birds, I mean, wow. Okay. So here he is, and he's understanding wisdom that he never understood before. So this is how he begins his new career. His reign as the wisest of all men. King Solomon, the famous story when the two mothers lived in the same house and they each had a baby, and one of the babies died, and both of them were claiming that the living baby was their baby. So what does he do? What does he do? He's still a boy, right? He says, okay, bring a knife, bring a sword, the executioner should come, I'm going to chop the baby in half. And one of the mothers is horrified. She says, no, don't do that. And the other mother says, yeah, go ahead. So he says, which is the true mother? The one who says, don't do it, right? And everybody understood the wisdom of this boy. There's another version of that story, a modern version of that story. And that is, in the world of where you're trying to make marriages, shidduchim, it's called making a shidduch, right? You're making a shidduch. So these two mothers were looking for a shidduch for their daughters. Two mothers, two daughters. And they were both looking for a shidduch for their daughters. So rumor had it that there was a prospective groom coming on the train to that part of Russia, to that village. So both mothers were waiting in the train station. And as the groom gets off the train, both mothers grab him. He's mine. No, he's mine. No, he's mine. No, he's mine. It's for my daughter. It's for my daughter. And they bring the case before the judge. So the judge looks at the case. You got two mothers, two prospective mothers-in-law. And you got one groom. What are we going to do? He says, we're going to have to exercise the wisdom of King Solomon. He says, bring an executioner, bring the sword, and we'll cut him in half. So one mother-in-law says, no, don't do it. The other mother-in-law says, yeah, go ahead. And then the judge said, which is the true mother-in-law? The one who said, chop him up.
Why is he wasting time? He should be doing stand-up.
You let us into that one.
For sure.
You see, it makes sense. Wisdom, right? So, where are we going with this? And Michael, I'm sorry to hear about your mother's funeral. May you be comforted amongst the mourners with Zion in Yerushalayim. Okay. Michael, tell us, where are you from? And who are you? I'm sorry to hear this. Okay, back to King Solomon. So King Solomon, when he talks, you have to listen. If you're looking for wisdom, you got to read the book of Proverbs, Mishlei. You got to read the book of Ecclesiastes, Kohelet. You got to read the book of Song of Songs, Shir HaShirim. It's sensational stuff. Now, the thing about King Solomon also is that it says that about King Solomon that he was so smart that he was even able to talk to an idiot. Now, this is a very important thing to understand with where we're going with this. He was so smart that he was even able to talk to a fool. To talk to a fool. Now, I ask you a simple question. Can you talk to a fool? What's the big deal about talking to a fool? You talk to a fool. Not so simple. It's easy to talk at a fool. It's much more complicated to talk to a fool. For example, if you're talking to somebody that is stuck in his way, he sees the world only through the lens of Trump, let's say, for example, or whatever, Obama, or he sees the world only through the lens of everybody's trying to get me, right? Whichever lens, binary lens that people put on their lives, and they see the world from one-sided perspective only. The whole world, it needs to be understood through the lens of LGBTQ, right? Or through the woke lens. How are you going to have a conversation with this person, right? Easiest way is to just say, you know what? Have a nice life and don't ever call me again. That's the easiest way to deal with it, right? But if you're going to actually engage with them and actually inspire them, that's going to take some very serious skill to be able to descend into their world and to be able to infuse them with an inspiration that's actually going to be meaningful to them. You're going to have to really be skilled and talented, right? So it says about King Solomon that he was able to give 3,000 metaphors. Each time you give a metaphor, what are you doing? When you give a metaphor, you're taking an idea which is an original idea that's a little too abstract for the listener to understand. So you bring them an analogy that relates to their world. That's what a metaphor is. A metaphor is like diluting the light, or the same way that an energy transformer. When you take energy from the Hoover Dam and you bring it to your house, it's got to go through the transformer, which minimizes the energy, right? So too, when you say a metaphor, you're kind of minimizing the light into the world, which the listener can relate to. So King Solomon was able to do that 3,000 times. For example, when we learn Chassidus, right? We learn Chassidus. You're learning an idea, like we're about to learn some ideas that are just way out there, right? And they're just totally removed from our reality. So if I'm able to bring it into an analogy that you can relate to, then I've done a good thing. Because you're like, oh, I think I know what the Rebbe is talking about. Yeah, remember, fools are all relative. Fools are all relative.
You have relatives who are fools?
Yeah, fools are relatives, relatives are fools. Yeah, exactly. So the idea you have to understand is that, imagine you're talking to a child. You're talking to a child, your child, right? And you're trying to explain to them why they should invest their money, their pocket money, right? And the kid doesn't understand, but I want to get the car. But then you explain to them, you give a metaphor, you explain some analogy about how it could be better for them, and they get it. They're like, oh, thank you, Daddy, for explaining that to me. What you've done is that you climbed into their little world. In the same way, when you're talking to a fool, somebody that sees the world, the worst kind of fools are the people that think that they're smart. That's the worst. A fool who knows he's a fool, you're making progress, right? At least he comes in with humility. But the person who thinks that he knows everything, that's the hardest one, because here the guy's not even receptive. You know how many times it happens to me that I walk into someone's house or something, and people will look at me and they'll ask a question as a statement. They'll be like, so people have actually said to me, I know what you believe. They've actually said that to me. I know who you are. I know what you believe. And I'm like, I look at them and I'm like, how do you know? Because I see how you dressed. And they say that with absolute confidence. Because I see how you're dressed. Therefore, they know what I think.
Idiotic.
How do you even respond to that? How do you even respond to that? I had countless stories like this. Okay. Shalom from North Carolina. And Michael, you're in Minnesota, I guess. Rabbi Sherpin, very nice. I think I remember him from Yeshiva. Okay. So King Solomon, when he's able to give 3,000 metaphors, what that means is he's going down 3,000 levels, right? If you're talking to your grandkids, you're probably going down 1 or 2 levels. But if you're going down 3,000 levels, that's intense. That's like the fear of heights, okay? To go that far down. And that was the wisdom of King Solomon, at least the way it's manifested once in the Torah, that he was able to do this. So now King Solomon is going to tell us now a piece of wisdom, an idea that might seem incredibly simplistic. But Hasidus comes to us. In fact, the Zohar is going to come to us. Ooh, Los Angeles. Wow, this is great. Missouri. That's amazing. We're getting global over here. I love it. Worldwide wisdom, guys.
They're up really early.
This is amazing. Thank you for joining me today. I'm going to be in LA tomorrow. Anyway, so God willing. So point is that the Zohar, which is the foundational book of the Kabbalah, is going to explain now the meaning of what King Solomon mentioned. And here's what he says. King Solomon, in the very beginning of the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 5, he makes the following statement. You ready? For profundity, here goes. He says, Ve'el mekaymo shoyef zeireach husham. When the sun goes, no, it's it. Ve'el mekaymo shoyef zeireach husham. After the sun sets, it yearns for its place. After the sun sets, it yearns for its place. Does that make sense to you? Ecclesiastes chapter 1, verse 5. After the sun sets, it yearns for its place. Okay, so what are we talking about? Remember, we're in the middle of a Hanukkah discourse. We're learning about Hanukkah. We're learning about the fact that you're supposed to light the menorah lights after sunset until the scavengers finish scavenging in the marketplace, right? So you're supposed to light the Hanukkah lights in the nighttime. We're introducing this idea from King Solomon. Now, I just want to tell you, yesterday I didn't teach this because I didn't understand it yet. So this is just a warning. It's a little deep, so abstract. I'm going to try my best to make it relatable. So King Solomon says that after the sun sets, it yearns for its place. The Zohar explains what that means. What is the place of the sun? One might think that the place of the sun is the east. One might think that the place of the sun, is the east where the sun rises, but really the Zohar tells us no, the place that the sun yearns to go is in the west, where it sets. Now, right here is a profound idea. Right here is a very profound idea. What this idea is saying in the Zohar is explaining King Solomon to mean that the sun yearns to set, and that is mind-blowing. The sun yearns to set. Doesn't the sun yearn to shine? Isn't the purpose of my life, if I'm the sun, the metaphor, is the purpose of my life to illuminate my influence? What does King Solomon mean when he says that the ultimate is to set? It's to come home. What's he talking about? What does this even mean? Come home to Hashem. Interesting. To complete your mission. Interesting. But what about my shining my light? Is this implying maybe that death is a good thing? Think about that. I mean, think about the enigma, the enigmatic inferences of the statement. Does it mean to say that ultimately it's a good thing to die because that's when your sun is setting and this is should be your aspiration? So the way that the Rebbe explains it is like this. He says that, yeah, that's exactly what it means.
Isn't the sun the wisdom of the Torah?
The sun is a metaphor for many things, Toby. Metaphor for many things, which could include the wisdom of the Torah. It could include... King Solomon deliberately kept it enigmatic so that it would be fluid in the metaphor. It's basically anything that shines. Think about a human being. The wisdom of the King Solomon is revealing to us as this great truth is that the purpose of the sun is to overlook its own influence in fulfillment of its purpose. This is how it's about to be explained. Ask not what America can do for you, but rather ask what you can do for America, which means instead of worrying about what it is, instead of worrying about how you can shine, worry instead about, okay, I'm going to take that back. Instead of worrying what you need, worry about what you're needed for. That's more precise. Instead of worrying about what you want, worry about what you are wanted for. I'm going to give you an example now, using a few examples, right, King Solomon? Because this is up there. This idea is up there, and I'm working hard to try to understand what the Zohar, what King Solomon, he's like up there, and I'm trying to bring it down to us so we can understand. So I'm going to give an example. So if you ever read a book about the Rebbe, it's called Turning Judaism Outward, or maybe the book by Telushkin, by Joseph Telushkin, called Rebbe, which was the story of, it's like a biography on the Rebbe. There's different biographies that were done. Highly recommended reading. And in the book, it talks about how the Rebbe was this genius of his times. Genius. He was head and shoulders above anyone else in his generation. Like the Rebbe was like, the Rebbe would correspond with the geniuses of his time in letters, talking about the early 20th century. And it was just mind-blowing in terms of when you read these correspondences between them, just amazing stuff. So when the Rebbe's father-in-law passed away in 1950, in January of 1950, the previous Rebbe, the sixth Chabad Rebbe, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak Schneerson, he left behind 3 daughters. He had 3 daughters and 3 sons-in-law. One of them was murdered in the Holocaust, which meant there was 2 left behind. The older one was Rabbi Gurari, and the younger one was Rabbi Schneerson. Now, the Rebbe would walk around with a newspaper in his pocket, in his back pocket. In those days, remember, people would walk around there, the fedoras, and they would have their newspapers, and this was like, the cell phone of those times. You'd have a newspaper in your pocket. And the Rebbe wanted very much to blend in, that nobody should take him, nobody should worry about him, nobody should think he's anything special. He had a job in the Brooklyn Navy Yard, he was trained at the Sorbonne, he was some sort of a ship engineer. When somebody once found that newspaper that the Rebbe carried in his pocket, they happened to notice that it was 14 years old. So the Rebbe had it there in his pocket, just, as a decoy, so nobody should take it serious. But really, you look at the date, it's like, 2007, it's like, oops. Where am I going with this? Is that the Hasidim understood that true greatness lay with the Rebbe. And they pestered the Rebbe incessantly to become Rebbe, and the Rebbe refused. He didn't want. It took an entire year until the first year of the previous Rebbe that the Rebbe agreed to accept the mantle of leadership. Now, I want you to think about this for a moment. Why would the Rebbe not want to become Rebbe? Look at that career move. Don't you want to be the leader of the most dynamic or fastest growing movement in the world? Isn't that good for your resume?
Because he was like Moses, the most humble man.
He was very humble, but not just that. This is how I understand it, Rabbi, is that the Rebbe was a genius who was head and shoulders above his peers, and he didn't want to have to deal. This is my interpretation, okay? He didn't want to have to deal with, simple people like me and my colleagues. We're the shluchim, the Rebbe's ambassadors. Now, I'm representing the Rebbe, right, in Palm Beach Gardens, and there's people that do so in Croatia. One of our members was just nominated last night to be the ambassador to Croatia. One of our members here from Palm Beach Gardens, yep. You have to make a community trip. So I was speaking to the Chabad Rabbi in Croatia. I'm setting him up, connecting, right? So we're the ambassadors of the Rebbe all over the world. But we're relatively like donkeys compared to the Rebbe, who's a human, right? It's like our intelligence is so far beneath the Rebbe. It's like, I can see why the Rebbe would not want to engage. And say, you know what? I'm good in my own little world, in my own little cocoon, my own spirituality, and I can delve into my own wisdom, and I don't have to worry about, giving speeches and meeting diplomats and making policy decisions for the Jewish world, right? Leave me alone. I can see why the Rebbe would want to indulge in his own wisdom and his own brilliance, and an indulgence that nobody else, quite frankly, could appreciate. I mean, think about this for a moment. When the Rebbe would speak in public, in Farbrengens, the Rebbe would speak for hours on end, 5, 6, 7 hours sometimes. And many of the people in the room didn't have a clue what's like. Let's face it. I mean,
And no notes.
no notes, nothing. The Rebbe would shoo, and he's quoting from all over the Torah, like everywhere. If you open up any page of the Rebbe's published works, and there's hundreds, it's probably over 250 books that the Rebbe published in his lifetime. Forget the books after his lifetime. And those edited books, if you look at just the footnote of any page of any of the Rebbe's works, it draws ideas and wisdom from every single part of Torah. It's amazing. It's absolutely mind-blowing to just look at the footnotes. You don't have to understand what the Rebbe is talking about. Just look, it's quoting from the written Torah, from the oral Torah, from the Talmud, from the commentaries, from the early commentaries, the latter commentaries, from the books of Kabbalah, from the books of Hakira, to the books of that's philosophy, to the books of Musar. It's everywhere. It's incredible. And now, when the Rebbe is talking in public, 6-7 hours, and people are falling asleep. They're dozing off. And I gave a speech a few weeks ago about what the Rebbe spoke about when people fell asleep during his some of his sermons. It's a great descent for a genius like that, for an Einstein, comparatively, to have to speak to us. Imagine, let's give an example. Imagine if Einstein was offered a job at Chabad Palm Beach Gardens to give the daily Torah study class, to give a class at Chabad Palm Beach Gardens, whatever, to give a daily science class, let's say, right? Do you think he would do it? I mean, like,
Talk to us.
thanks, but no thanks. You know what I mean? Einstein over here with us. You know what? I'd rather mind my own business. That's how I'm looking at this, and that's my understanding of why the Rebbe didn't want to do it. He was actually reluctant. Besides his extreme humility, he would rather indulge in his own wisdom. But it's this idea of King Solomon. When King Solomon says that after the sun sets, it yearns for its place. Such a difficult verse to translate. Let me see if I can pull it up over here in the original text over here. 1 second.
He's pretty good too, you know.
Let me see what I can pull up over here. Hold on. I wonder how these guys translate it.
The sun never sets.
Ooh, the sun never sets. Interesting.
So he's right somewhere.
Yes.
No, the world.
The world
sets.
sets.
Not
The sun
right.
doesn't set. Yeah. This is fun. This is fun.
Okay. Okay, I'm not exactly finding this might be a little error in here, but anyway, I'm just going to keep on going here. So my point is, I guess, where am I going? Is that when the verse in Ecclesiastes tells us, oh, here it is. Okay, here's the exact verse. Okay, the sun rises and the sun sets. This is where it comes from. Sunrise, sunset. It comes from here. The sun rises and the sun sets, and it yearns for its place where it shines. That's what it means. The sun rises and the sun sets, and it yearns for its place where it shines. So yes, it rises and yes, it sets. But what is its intention? What is its aspiration for where it shines? Where does it shine? One would think it shines in the morning. One would think it shines in the east. Comes the Kabbalah, the Zohar, and tells us, no, where does it shine? It shines when it sets. In other words, when the sun is shining, the sun is doing what it wants to do, to shine. When the sun sets, it's doing what it's needed for. In the metaphor, what that means is that when the Einstein is teaching, he's doing what he likes to do. When he's teaching to, university students that understand him, when he's teaching the next generation of engineers, of nuclear engineers, great, he feels fulfilled. But that's not the purpose of Einstein. The purpose of Einstein is to be not where you want to be, but where you wanted. To be not what you need, to do not what you need to do, but to do what you're needed for.
Purpose, meaning.
And your purpose is to illuminate the dark. That's your purpose. Your purpose is to illuminate where the sun don't shine. Your purpose, in the metaphor of the sage and the students, the sage and the students, your purpose is to illuminate the minds of the students that are currently dark. And that's the teaching that the Zohar is telling us. Now,
It's like what Frankl said.
Viktor Frankl,
Yeah.
tell us.
Well, I'm trying to remember. I thought you might. You talked about if you have meaning, you can do anything.
Okay, so you're getting into meaning. I'm still not there yet. I'm still not at meaning because we're still grappling to understand the wisdom of King Solomon. So what King Solomon is essentially saying is like this. He's going to tell us now that the true intention is not where you are most comfortable, but where you are most needed. And therefore, where are we needed? Where are we needed? What is our purpose? Our purpose is to illuminate the darkness of this world. That's our purpose. This world is the world that God created in order to become a home for God Almighty. This is the purpose. And therefore, you think that you're a very important person. You think that you're spiritually conscious and spiritually elevated. And therefore, right now, what you need to be doing is to be meditating upon some profound idea. And then comes a little kid and he sits next to you and he says, "Can you teach me Aleph Bet?" What would you do? Would you say, "Well, this is beneath my pay grade. Someone else can be teaching him Aleph Bet. Somebody as wise as me, as important as me, should not be teaching Aleph Bet to this little boy. No, I will not teach him Aleph Bet." Comes to King Solomon and he says, "That's what you're needed for. Your purpose is to illuminate the darkness. I know it seems beneath you. I know that it seems inappropriate for the sun to be setting, but that's the goal. That's the ultimate intention, is for you to be going to illuminating the darkness." And that's why our purpose in this world is to engage with physical mitzvahs. Think about this for a moment. Other religions, you know what they do, other religions? Other religions, they're all into meditation. Think of the Far Eastern religions, the Eastern religions. Think of I often bring this example, but think of like the Catholics, for example. The Catholic priests, the most holy people in Catholicism, they don't get married because sexuality is a sin, according to what they say. They also say the rich man is a sinner. They also say that. The Muslims, they don't drink alcohol. Very lofty, holy lives they live. So they don't drink alcohol, right? But the Jews, you walk into a holy house of the Jewish people, and it looks like a bar. I mean, there's appetizers, there's tapas, there's tequila, right? There's single malt scotch. You're like, this is a holy house. Seriously? Like really? This is a holy house? Where's the meditation? Where is the wisdom? No. Would you like a herring? Would you like a schmaltz herring? Or would you like it, with the cream sauce? Would you like that sauce? This is the holy house. Because as Jews, we understand that our purpose is to illuminate the darkness of this world. And when you take a herring and you make a blessing on it before you eat it, and you're eating it in honor of the Shabbos, and you're eating it in order to give you the strength to study Torah, then what you've done is that you've sanctified the herring. Yes, you're a genius. Yes, you're an Einstein, maybe. But this is what you're needed for. The purpose of the sun is when it sets. And that's why when we light the Hanukkah lights, we're doing it at the nighttime. Because the purpose of the Hanukkah lights is to illuminate the darkness of this world. Remember, the Hanukkah story is when the Jewish people were attacked by the Greeks that wanted not to kill them, but to assimilate them. Remember that. It was a war not against the Jews, it was a war against Judaism. This is a very toxic, dangerous battle where the Jewish people were fighting an existential threat that threatened not their bodies, but their souls. This was an extremely seductive culture that threatened to take captive, to take hostage our very children, our most prized possessions, the hearts and minds of our children, into a culture of hedonism, of pleasure, of paganism. And this was extremely seductive, incredibly alluring for the kids of the Jewish people. Just like today, we live in a culture where we have to worry about our children. We have to worry about ourselves. Anytime you open up your phone, you never know what's going to pop up, what kind of video, what kind of message is going to pop up on your phone, right? We live in a culture which is extremely seductive. And if you're not constantly vigilant, you could be sucked into. This is the greatest darkness that people have ever faced.
The word is more dangerous than the sword.
The word is more dangerous than the sword, yes. The kiss is more dangerous than the curse. Yes. And I spoke about it this past Shabbos, how there's two kinds of anti-Semitism. There's when Esau bites Jacob, and then there's when Esau kisses Jacob. When Esau bites Jacob, at least you know who the enemy is. But when Esau kisses Jacob, you think he's your friend, right? And that's even worse because you cannot differentiate between friend from foe. That's the darkness that Hanukkah comes to illuminate. And that's our purpose. And this is the reason why Hanukkah is at the nighttime. Because Hanukkah comes to illuminate the greatest and thickest darkness of all, more than any other lighting, for example, the Shabbos candles that light up the daytime, or the menorah lights in the temple that light up the daytime. Hanukkah's only at nighttime, because our purpose is to do not what we want to do, but what we're needed, what we're wanted for, not what we need, but what we're needed for. So we have to go out there and to inspire ourselves, our children, grandchildren, our friends and neighbors and colleagues to embrace the power of our faith, despite the allure of the culture in which we live. It's so incredibly seductive. It's so appealing. It's so exciting. It's like the Rabbi Yitzchak of Berditchev, the disciple of Baal Shem Tov. He said to God, God, it's really not fair what you've done for us. You're giving us two choices. There's heaven, there's paradise, and then there's purgatory, right? Paradise and purgatory. So you do the right thing, you go to paradise. You do the wrong thing, you go to purgatory. But what have you done? You've put, if you want to find the way to paradise, you got to find a rabbi, you got to go to a shul somewhere, you got to be able to break your teeth and break your head in a foreign language to understand the Aramaic and read the Talmud, and finally, till you get it, it could take a month and a half, right? But to get the pleasures of purgatory, that's right in front of my face. It's not even fair, says Rabbi Yitzchak, to fall into the pit of purgatory is right in front of our face at any opportunity. But to descend and to rise into paradise, that's going to take a tremendous effort. And no wonder you got far less clients going to paradise than you got going to purgatory. So this is a very, very difficult project. And when we light those Hanukkah lights, we're not just lighting a little candle. What we're doing is that we're fighting against a culture of assimilation. I want you to think about how hard it is for you to experience kosher food during Hanukkah. Think about that. How many Hanukkah parties are you being invited to that are not kosher? Think about that. Just for a moment, a very practical question. How many Hanukkah parties are you being invited to that are not kosher? Is this the bite of Esau, or is it the kiss of Esau? Esau wants to be my friend. Come to my Hanukkah party. Just don't do it in a kosher way. Think about that. How hard it is to be able to have the wherewithal, the stamina to stand up and say, actually, I need to stay strong with my values and my principles. In other words, I'll come to the Hanukkah party, but I need you to make it kosher. And he has the phone number to the kosher caterer. Is it that difficult to make it kosher? It's going to take you tremendous courage to stand up, and your wife is going to tell you, why did you have to say that to them? Can't you just let sleeping dogs lie, right? It's going to take tremendous character, tremendous courage. We're living in a culture that is trying desperately to assimilate us till this very day. It's a tremendous darkness. It's the kiss of Esau. Hanukkah's here to light up that night. And to light up that night, you need the greatest light in order to illuminate the greatest darkness. That's the reason why the lighting of the Hanukkah lights is at night. Now, what we've done today is we've discussed this idea. Apologies on the loftiness. I think it makes sense, right? But I think I've explained it in my own words. But now what I'm going to do next time is I'm going to try to read it inside the text. Hopefully you have the books by then to be able to see it, because it's going to get a little esoteric. But I wanted you to understand the context beforehand, before we get into it, so the next week when we carry on, you'll at least have the context of what we're talking about. Very powerful idea. And thank you to everybody who's joining us here. Lots of conversation going on over here from around the world. Jerusalem, cool. All right, great. Anyways, thank you very much, everybody. Have a lovely day. Shalom, and thank you for joining me here.